All right, well, it is 1 o'clock, and that means it's time to get started. Hi, I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to present Dion McCormick, no relation, who is our lead solutions engineer. Today, during our Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcasts, Dion is going to go over a quick demonstration, but then he is here to answer your questions. So you can go ahead and type those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel, and we will get to them a little bit later. So let's begin. Hello, Dion, are you there?
Off mute, and yes, I am.
Fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter. And there's your screen.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Well, for those of you in colder climates, I hope you're warm and not stuck housebound or something like that because of how many feet of snow did you guys had a lot of slush up there, didn't you, Dave?
We got a lot of slush, maybe half of slush. Yes, it's nasty. Yeah.
There's something about wet feet that just is just, not a big fan. Not a big fan unless it's in the sand and the water's about 72 degrees in the Bahamas or something. Then I'm a big fan of wet feet, but not in the Arctic tundra.
Brownish, nasty side of the road sort of slushes.
Yeah, and I hope our friends up in Seattle and the Northwest, they're getting like hammered with lots of snow. It's crazy, man. I hope they're all safe and sound. Well, everybody be careful. Watch out driving out there. Anyway, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate you finding us. I know we've had a little difficulties, but we're getting everybody linked back into our weekly meeting. My name's Dion McCormick. Again, thank you very much, Dave. And we're having a great time. There's some really fun stuff going on in development. Man, they're busy, aren't they, Dave? I mean, they're just crazy busy. I can barely keep up with all the things they're doing, and they're doing some amazing things. Well, today, our goal is twofold. I have a little demonstration of a recent feature addition, which I think is really, really, really cool. And I want to share that with everybody. And then secondly, we're here for your questions. We actually got a couple questions that came in through guides at Alpha Software. We want to say thank you very much to the individuals who took the time to do that. We appreciate it. We will attempt to answer your question today, and we may have some follow-up kind of clarifications as we go through it from there. And if you have any questions yourself, you can go to the Q&A section, the questions section of your GoToWebinar control panel and type that in there. Dave will be monitoring that closely, and I think we'll try to get to as many as we can. So with that said, I'm going to just jump into our demonstration for today, if that's okay. Dave, any other items, announcements, or anything like that?
That is it. I think we're ready.
All right, cool. Excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my development environment here. And what I'm going to focus on today is that the Alpha Grid component has always had search capabilities built into it. Specifically, they've had the ability to, add search. In fact, I'm going to build a real quick grid just to show it. I know this is like most of you have seen it, but I'm going to start there. So I'm going to click New, create a new grid component, and I'm just going to create a blank to start out with. Going to select my query. I'll just use the north winds because that everybody should have that available. I should actually show that there. I'll go ahead and put in customers, and then I've got some fields here. I'll drop them in there. And what I'm going to do is go into the component type. You'll notice I was in the query here, the fields. I went back up here to component type, and I'm going to enable what's called the search part. And now it opens up a search part area over here. I go there. I add a few of the fields in there. Let's say company name, contact name, title, and maybe city, and save this. So webinar grid _ grid. And now we have a grid, and I'll just run it real quickly and we'll go from there. So I can go in here and put in a name, let's say Antonio or something like that, search it. You can show and hide this area. There's a lot of little things you can do here. And also, which I'm not sure if you've experimented with, but if you have the web security system enabled, then you're able to actually save this search, and this search will save under the name of the person, the username, which is a kind of nice little feature. It allows you to provide self-service to that. And so if you indeed have the security system enabled, you'll see here there's something that says save and load searches, allow user to save search, allow user to load. Again, those will only take active when you go, is when you security, because the way they do is they save that search information with your username so that when you log in, you can do it. And that's really a cool self-service feature built into it. And I just want to make sure people are aware of that you kind of get that for free. Once you enable the security system, have this, you can just enable that. Now your users can save and load searches. But I want to share a newer, more powerful capability. Now, we talk about searches, like there's the basic search, which is this top level here. And there's other searches. You can do quick searches here. You can also do something called QBE. Let me go ahead and turn that on. I'm going to go here and go to see. I can actually do something called query by row, by example row. And this is really powerful because now it gives you I can hide that QB role. So I can say like, I want all the names that start with B, and I want them to be XYZ. So this was a built-in, this has been around for a long, long time, but this basically allows the user to kind of create more complex searches. Like if they're searching a lot of data, they can go in here and make, like, is it blank? Is it null? And then they can do multiple columns here. So the QBE is very fancy, very handy. And you can do and or kind of canary conditions. And you can also do things like inverse searches where you're saying exclude the matching records, meaning do the inverse of what you're searching for. So that's pretty handy there. And again, all you have to do is enable query by form and it works. But there's actually a newer way to do that, which I find is much more intuitive and easier for people to use. So I'm in the grid system here. I'm at the properties for the grid portion, not in the search area, in the grid portion. And I'm going to type something called advanced. And you'll notice that there is a feature called advanced search feature, advanced search. So I'm going to go ahead and find that property. And you'll see it's like our query by example row. It's just you enable it here. So I've clicked the has advanced search feature. So I've enabled that, turned that on. Now I have to do a little configuration to it. You'll notice right below it, we have something here called advanced search definition. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up here. And that's going to open up a configuration panel. And there's a lot that's in this panel. It's a lot of fun to play with because you can really create very neat stuff. So the first thing we need to do with advanced search is kind of give the grid a little bit of instruction, sort of like when we had the search over here, we kind of have to tell it what fields that we want to allow the user to use. You could literally click add all fields and add all the fields in there, but I'm just going to add a couple fields to start out with. So I'm going to click add field here, and you'll see these are my different fields that are in my grid. So I'll go ahead and select company name. And then when I select company name, it's asking me, well, what kind of control type should I use for that? In our case, I'm going to use a text box because it's just you're typing in like a company name here. And then you'll notice once I've done that, you have a control type and a label. We can adjust it there. Let's go ahead and add another field in here. I'm going to put in the contact title, and I'm also going to do a text box there. Then I'm going to add a third field, and that's going to be let's try city. And in this case, I'm going to do a suggest. So you can add different types of things. Now, if you've used lookup tables or lookup on fields, you'll see that, oh, great. If you're doing a suggestion, we can go in here to connection string and tie this to a table. So I'm going to go ahead. These first two are just text boxes, but this is an auto suggest list. So I'm going to go ahead and change that. So instead of just typing in the city, you can actually look up the cities that are available. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to select our Northwind, select our table, and I'll just pull out my customers here. And then the field I want to search in is in city. There you go. And if you want to have like a foreign key relationship, you can do there. But that basically just says now, when someone's in the city field, go ahead and search or look up that information on the fly. It makes it much easier for them to kind of figure things out. So let's click OK. We've got 3 fields here: company name, contact title, and city. Click OK. Let's save this. And let's do a working preview. And you know what? I'm going to get rid of this search stuff. We don't need it. So I'm just going to go back here to the component type and disable my search part, which will remove it. Don't need it, and go back into working preview. So we'll get rid of this so we save some space. So now you'll notice, well, we don't have that search area, but we do have a new button that's been automatically added to our user interface called Add New Search Field. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to do company name. And you'll notice when I do, it dynamically generates a field for me here. And so now I can sit there and say, okay, company name, let's go ahead and put in AL, and let's go ahead and run that query. And and notice I have my different things. So you tell it how. Let's go starts with and run that query. So now we pulled up Alfke, and we have that available there. Let's go ahead and say maybe contains. Let's see what it comes up with there. So immediately you've already given the user a lot more flexibility. They can say when the company name, they can kind of, pick the different things they want to do and put those within there. And if I don't like that, I can delete that. And then I go back to clear here. So I'm going to go back to company name. I'm going to go ahead and put Alfie out, and I'll go ahead and do a contains, run that query in there. Now you go, oh, that's good, but I want to do some more contact stuff. So I'm going to add a second search field called contact title. And I'm going to type the word mark for marketing. And I'm also going to do a contains in here. And you'll notice that it adds a little condition here. So it's AL plus this search field. In this case, it's an and or, and I'm saying it's and. So it's got to satisfy both these conditions. So now watch what happens down below. We have 14 records now. And now we're down to 7 because we have a company name that has AL somewhere in it, and we have in the contact title something that it also contains there. But I can change that and say, you know what? I only want them with starts with. And we're down to 6. So the user can build up very complex user queries in here by allowing you to do this. In fact, you can even add QBF, which is pretty amazing stuff there. And you can also do and ors between this. So let's go ahead and look at this, and let's say, oh, you know what? Let's add a new search field. And that search field is city, but watch when I start typing into period. Let's say I'm only looking for people in Paris for some reason. So you'll notice that it's got a auto suggest. So let's go ahead and let's go like Berlin. That would be like, oh, there's the 2 cities here. Let's go ahead and select Bergamo and run the query. So now it's doing all 3 of these. So this is sort of like a business intelligence tool capability, meaning that instead of you having to figure out exactly what they're going to search for, you can just add all the fields you want them to be able to search on, enable it in the system, and then it will automatically take care of generating this. And these fields can be very complex, meaning you can use suggest list, other kind of field types. In fact, if I go back in to the properties here, and this is in the advanced search definition, let's go ahead and go into contact title. You'll see that the field types, you can have date pickers, you can do date ranges, step switches, which are kind of yes, no, combo list, button list. So all the kind of sort of controls that you would use to generate your search are available within this new structure. But the cool thing about it is that you don't clutter up your user interface, meaning you could have 50 different fields they could search across, and they essentially build their own search there. Now, a couple of things that are cool about this too. You can customize all of the items here with different look, feel, etc. So you can completely customize the look and feel. You can also customize the search, which I'm going to go ahead and say allow, load, and save, and ABC. And note, this doesn't require the security system to be enabled. So this is kind of nice from that standpoint there. So I'm going to let that there. And then there's some additional customizations, like you can put some HTML before and after and change some modifications there. And what's great is you can export all this and copy it into a different grid without having to recreate all this stuff manually. And you'll notice it's in a fairly straightforward JSON structure. So once you kind of understand it, you could almost write this yourself. It's pretty straightforward from that standpoint there. So let's go ahead and show you what this looks like now. So I'm going to go into working preview. And you'll notice I've got a load query, but let's go ahead and just say contact name contains that, and I'll say run the query. Okay. So I'm down to 14 records. So actually, cancel. Let's save the, I don't have the repository start. Oh, let me show you what I need to do on that. And I apologize, I should have done that before. This feature, the load save, when you allow that to work in your project, you have to have your, and I've got to get these enabled, the repository enabled here. And basically the repository, if you haven't used it, it's a really handy device or capability. It's a predefined table in the database that really just tracks like key value pairs. So you can kind of think of it as like MongoDB, where you have a key and then you have a value that's associated with it. And so Alpha is using that to store these queries in there. So you don't have to worry about writing any JavaScript. You don't have to write any XBasic, any SQL. It's just going to use that there. But I don't have that in my demo, and I'll have to fix that for our next one there to be able to do that. You can do that. And when you do that, basically it just stores as a key value pair in there so that if the person wants to restore their searches, they can do that fairly quickly. And it works very much like the previous search, store, and retrieve, where it basically just, you can pick from a list and pick the ones you want and bring them back into the system. Now, I wanted to show you one other thing that's kind of cool about this. So I'll go ahead and save this for now. I'm going to go ahead and just do this fairly quickly. So I'm going to go into my list control and create new one here. I'm so used to, I got to tell you, everybody, I hit new for so long, but it's like right here, you can just go boom and save yourself a couple screens. So word to the wise. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a list control. And let's go ahead and do list customers. Use the quick setup genie to make this easy. And we'll go ahead and select customers. And okay. I don't need a detail view. I'm not going to do that. Okay. So I'm just going to make it real simple. So I've got my list of customers, and I do want to put that in a panel card. And we'll make that 100% there so it looks decently here. And we'll go into working preview here. And our list is here. Nothing really fancy, but we've got a list, pulling all that stuff there. But I now can go into the list, and you can add advanced search functionality to this here. And I believe what we do, so I'm going to do that next week because I want to leave a lot of time for question and answer here. But the list control has the same ability as this to create a advanced search, which is really cool because then you get even more control over the look and feel and how it operates. And it's as simple. And again, the idea is that the user can create these complex search capabilities and ability to save and load them. And we've had customers come back after this was released, and this was only released a few months ago. This is a very recent new addition, saying they literally were able to sell more of their in solution because it's something that customers needed. They had more of a data mining situation, and customers loved this feature so much that they signed up more customers for their system because their customers this is great. That means I can build my own queries, my other things like that. I don't have to ask you for them. And again, you go more and more to self-service. So you as a developer creates a structure for them to be successful in. And then they can take the ball and run with it and do, more extensive kind of almost personalization of the system without you having to go in and write, go in and say, oh, great, I've got to go to my search area, enable it, and add 3 more fields because they want to do that. In this case, no, you don't have to. And the other thing I like about it is it's nice and clean. There's just a single little button that's on there that allows you to load that up and be able to do it. And you can customize all this to make it look the way you want to and match the styling of your grid and your UX and other things along those lines you're doing there. So that's called the advanced search capability. Next week, I'll just dive in and show you real quickly on, along with some other things on how to use it with the list control. But I got to tell you, it's really fun, very easy to implement, very easy to put on your system. And I think you're going to find your users like it because you're basically giving more control, more power to them to do what they want to do without having to say, oh, I can't do those kind of queries. And really fun, very easy to implement. Dave, that's my demonstration for today.
That's it, huh? And you're sticking with it, as they say? Fantastic. Very good. Thank you, Dan.
Thank
so
you.
let's take a look. I don't see a bunch of... Oh, here, I do have a question on the thing you were just covering. That was, can date fields also include date ranges when you're doing
yes.
searches? Okay.
The answer is yes. Basically, let me go here, properties, advanced search. When you select the type, you can do what's called a date range picker, and that will put an end and a beginning on, or end and beginning for that range.
Very cool. Okay, so a couple of other questions. I don't know if we got to it, but someone did ask questions about transient messages last week, and I know we were a little short on time. I don't know if we can get that one.
Okay. Oh, yeah, we can go through those really quick.
Great, awesome.
Well, I forget the exact question, but let me go ahead and show what it is while maybe we look it up. I'll go ahead and do a real quick.
Right, so I think what they wanted to do while you're starting this out was,
I'll go ahead.
If I recall, correct me if I'm saying this wrong, but I think like a script was running, and at different parts during the script, they wanted to let the user know where they were, like in kind of like an update scenario. I'm 50% done, or I've just emailed a PDF. But instead of doing it like as a status bar, or maybe something running on the screen, they'd like to do that as a transient message. And they're wondering, how do you go about doing that?
Well, luckily, you're in luck.
Excellent.
We have something called WebSockets. Now, we need to talk a little bit about how does the alpha work. So when you have a UX control, what happens in that control is it gets manifested as HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and put down on the machine. And so then you maybe have like a button on that says do an AJAX callback. And the nature of AJAX callback is the fact that, and I'll go ahead and show you this is that it basically calls a function back on the server. So it basically says, hey, server, here's some information that I need you to do this thing, whatever it happens to be. And the cool thing about the AJAX callback is it doesn't actually do a page submit. So all it does is send a little message back to the server saying, hey, do some work. And then that sends back some JavaScript that the client then does, like update some fields or do this or things like that. Now, the tricky part is that it's sort of like it sends the message, the function request back to the back end, and then the server does what it needs to do. And then when the server's done, it says, hey, great, I'm going to send you the response. So you don't know, it's not synchronous, it's asynchronous, meaning that you can't count on an immediate reply from the backend server because you don't know what's going on. The server could be loaded. It could be a very long running kind of scenario. So what this person is saying is, I kind of want to, it is a long running. I'm doing like 3 or 4 things. It may take 5-10 seconds to do that, which is an eternity for someone who uses the web now. So they're saying, is there a way for me to tell them what is going on while I'm in that XBasic callback? And the answer is off the cuff. The way, and let me just go ahead and show you real quick. If it's going to call this function here called example process, and then you have a function back here that's at example process, and then the last thing you do is you send back, you say, okay, example process equal to alert hello. Okay. So the issue is that you're going to run all your code, do all your things, and then you're going to send back a message, but that could be 5-10 seconds later, and there's no way to do it in the interim. But there is a way to do it. And the way I came up with this was to use WebSockets. And we'll send, do we have, I'm not sure. Hold on here. Yeah, we might. Dave, if you don't mind going on to the and putting it into the queue. Well, I can do it. I'm sorry. I shouldn't delegate. Get off my tail. Come on, Dan.
If
I
you
get
want something,
spoiled.
if you want something done right, Dan.
Dave, could you notify the staff to do a search on documentation.alphasoftware.com for WebSockets?
Oh, but they're already bringing your car around, sir. And
I know.
restocking the Grey Poupon in the glove compartment.
Exactly. Talk about an ad that's stuck. Jeez Louise. Okay. WebSocket. Okay. This is your, okay, that's send message. These are all the low level stuff, but I'm going to explain that. There we go. This is actually a really good documentation on here. Dun, 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 dun. Let's see.
Speaking of which, Sarah has just joined us.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I've already taken care of it, Sarah. So what I do is the following, is I enabled WebSockets on this UX. And the way you do that, and this goes through all the details, so I'm not going to go through every little nitty gritty detail. But when you create a UX, the first thing you need to do is called enable WebSockets. Okay. And that enables this to listen for WebSockets. And WebSockets are really cool. Basically, it's like a real-time messaging kind of capability. Now, very important also, you need to go to your project properties. And again, that documentation talks all about it. And you need to set up the WebSocket server and enable that at the project level. Now, the interesting thing about the WebSockets is that normally when you're using Alpha, you're using port 80 or 443 to talk back and forth the server. WebSockets actually uses its own other port. So be aware that you're going to need to designate another port on your server that is going to be used for this communication between the two, because you're not communicating back through the normal channels. Essentially, it's a separate channel. Now, the cool thing about WebSockets is that they don't have that problem of that you can send messages anytime. So how this is working is basically on the, let me go here. When I enable WebSockets here, it basically tells this UX to listen for incoming messages. So it sits there and sets up a process and listens for incoming messages. So when it launches, it actually tells the server, hey, here's where I am, and this is what it is. And then the server can send these little messages, or even larger ones, to that server. And there's much better demos than I'm doing right now in terms of explaining the core concept. But the benefit that now is that you don't have to submit and restore or do an XBasic callback. This is going to be automatically listening for it. And there's two things that make that really powerful. One is now this UX doesn't have to call back to the server every 30 seconds to say, hey, do you have any messages for me? Hey, do you want me to do something? And that will happen often when people are trying to do dynamic updates of user interfaces, grids, lists, etc. What this allows you to do is when you enable this, then that enables the server to send a message here. And if I go to the client-side event, you'll see there's an event called WebSocket on message. And basically what happens is when a message is received, then it runs this little piece of JavaScript. And again, there's great examples in that demonstration there. So what we can do is we can accomplish what you said, meaning that you take your UX where you want to give that person that status update, you enable the WebSocket capability and here. So you'll see in here, I've got a button here that calls a backend callback, calls this example process here. And then I've got this little messages here that shows messages. So I'm going to go back to my JavaScript or XBasic function, and you can see in here that I'm using a built-in feature, a XBasic command that says WebSocket server send message, and then I send the message. And so you'll see I have a message here, wait for 5 seconds, send another message, wait for 5 seconds, wait for 5 seconds, so you can do your processing and then send a message. Now, the cool thing about this, and let's make sure this works, is let's go ahead. I'm going to actually launch this in the browser. It's my, let me go ahead and do that. Let me go ahead and show you this working. The neat thing about that is that you can now have a long running function and then still send updates to the user out in the feed or on that UX when it's running. Oh, this is my Acronis. Come on. Ignore. Okay. Good. So this is my UX. It could be across the world. It doesn't have to be on my local machine here. So here are my messages. So I'm going to click my button here. So you'll see there's message number 1. Now I'm in that XBasic callback. I am still in that XBasic callback, but check this out. It's sending messages back to me periodically every 5 seconds to update my status of what's going on. And you'll see in a moment, now the XBasic callback is completed. That last message here is basically saying the XBasic callback closing out. But you'll notice the user didn't see any updates, reflashes, or anything. It's just this, because what happens is every 5 seconds, the server is sending a message to this UX that the WebSocket message grabs that incoming message and then sets the value in that field. And so, and as you can see, it's not a lot of code that's to it. And so therefore, on your server side, you can do as, this could be like, okay, create a report, send them a message. And then once the report's done, you can email the report. And then this, and at each point these things are happening, you can send messages back to the front end. So the long-winded, of course, is WebSockets are your trick to be able to create this sort of in XBasic callback messaging to the front end. And it's very effective. It's cool because it's a design pattern. The only thing I got to caution you with, and this is where you have to spend a little time thinking through this, is that WebSockets are indiscriminate, meaning the following is that when this UX launches, it sends a message back and says, hey, I'm ready to go. Send me a message. But let's say you had someone else had that same UX and they launched it on their side. Well, if you don't figure out how to filter, and it'll go in the documentation how to do this, what will happen is the socket server is going to say, oh, there's client A and there's client B. Oh, I've got a message. I'm sending a message. It's going to send it to both of those people. And so you could have another person getting updates. And there's ways around that. And it talks about that in the documentation, how you can crawl what are called message subscriptions. So you only subscribe to certain messages and things like that. So you have to think through it a lot, but it's a very nice feature. It works very nicely. And it's also really powerful because the server demand is very low. Now, in this case, I'm doing it within an XBasic callback, so I'm doing a bunch of server stuff. But let's say you had a situation where you had, and they use a chat window example, but let's say you had a dashboard and you had 10 people on that dashboard. Instead of having 10 people every minute saying, please refresh me, they'll sit there and then you can send out a message to all those 10 saying, hey, guess what? Something changed on the back end. Please refresh yourself. So therefore, you can reduce server demands and you can make this you can make a much more efficient scenario. And WebSockets are fun because you think about it, you're starting to just squirt these little messages around to different things. And if you use filtering and stuff like that, you can create some very fancy things like, oh, I want to register and start watching these transactions in the database. Then you can say in your server side code for updating that database, you can say whenever it gets updated, send a socket message out. And so there's a lot of fun things you can do it. So that's the methodology, is set up and use the WebSocket server, use the built-in function called WebSocket server send message. And here is how you basically set up your message. You generate some JSON and you send it out. And then on the client side, you just have to use this WebSocket on message. And basically what happens is you'll notice I'm saying, adding a little target so I can say, filter the kind of socket messages that are coming in. I can just put a little JavaScript to say, oh, update that field with the incoming message. Very straightforward. And again, that piece of documentation I sent out was really well done. I appreciate Sarah. She did an awesome job. And I think after you go through that, you're going to know WebSockets, and I think that'll be your solution.
Excellent. Great answer. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Here's a question. Let's say you want to set up a system that sends emails to customers automatically. Let's say that it takes a look at a quote and it notices if the quote is more than X days old, it should send an email to the customer to see if they are still interested. How would you go about setting up a system like that?
Okay, and your timing is perfect.
Is
in
it?
the olden days, i.e., 9 months ago.
Okay.
The way I would have done that is I would have set up an A5W page, which had purely script on it. And then I would use the Windows like a curl command inside the Windows task scheduler to call that A5W page. So you basically would be calling a script every so many minutes or something like that. And on the A5W page, you could have all of that script. And so it runs through and does these kind of regular scheduled tasks like query the database, look up there. And it's Ajax. So the nice thing is that just the server goes off, does its stuff, and then it's done. Now with the new days, the way I would do that now is I would set up a web service. So use the new web services capability to basically create a XBasic class that has that function or that thing, wrap it as a web service, and then with the Windows Task Scheduler, you can have it call that web service because it's basically just a fancy sort of A5W page that then calls the underlying code. That's the better way to do it because now you're using a nice, it's just better, because you can also expose that down the road to other people if you need other people to be able to hit that web service. So I would build an XBasic class that does that task, regular task. I'd wrap it as a web service. And then you can use in the task scheduler curl to trigger that web service. And here's the cool thing. Curl is included with Alpha. If I actually go on here real quick and I go to my C drive, go to program files, A5V12, go down here. Curl is actually included in it. So basically in curl, you basically say curl and then the name of the page you want to run, the URL of the page, and it's like a browser calling that page. In our case, it's calling the service, web service, and then the web service says, oh, thank you very much. I'm going to go and run that XBasic class now, which will do your process and off to the races. Now, what's cool too is you can include parameters in that call. So you can say, use the same call, but, one time do all the processes, so there's a lot of flexibility on that. And it's very reliable because you're going to use the Windows Server Scheduler, which is rock solid. 2, if you don't want to use the Windows Server Scheduler, I have people who use Zapier, and Zapier has a ability to call something on a regular schedule basis. And I'm sure there's many other scheduler systems out there that will do the same kind of scenario where basically on a periodic basis, it just hits a URL. So again, wrap your code in a XBasic class, wrap it as a web service, and then deploy it on your server, and then use the Windows scheduler to do a curl command to execute that web service. Sounds like a good full webinar for the future, if you think about it.
Does actually. Yeah, we do get that question of, having something run periodically, actually quite a lot. Let's see what else we've got.
Oh, by the way, real quick note while you're looking at that, the other thing that's kind of fun too is you can go ahead and in your XBasic class, you can write logging stuff, so you can write out logs as it gets called. So you can tell, like when you build your class, you can actually add your own logging to it. So you can kind of then go back in the history and say, well, did it get called? What happened when it called, etc. So you have visibility for these automated tasks. Pretty handy.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, in a tabbed UI, this user would like to be able to use a keyboard combination to close the tabbed UI. Is that something that tabbed UIs can do?
Would they be, if you can clarify, closing a pane?
I was wondering if it was the panel. No, it's the whole thing, the whole tabbed UI.
That I'd have to check into. I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay. That sounds good.
Yeah, there are now, you can trap key commands and stuff like that. There are ways to do that. But I have to do a little research on that. Let me write that down. Okay. Get to work. Go. I've got my homework.
All right. I see that we're actually very light on questions today.
I know.
Maybe you've explained all there is to.
Or scare the hell out of them. They're like hidden the bricks or hidden, like, I'm out of this movie. This movie is terrible. You know,
Yeah,
I
there you
still
go.
got to go see Aquaman, man. I heard that was really fun. Didn't get to see that.
That does sound fun. Yeah.
There was a question that came in, actually. We got to be fair. Someone talked
That's true. A
about
little bit earlier. Yeah, let me
the
go find that one.
timer function. So I might need, I hope the gentleman's on with us here, is I'm going to go ahead and open up a UX here. I'm going to go to UX, UX controls. And let me go ahead and open up, I'll just create a new one here. UX controls have a neat feature built into them, like the grid. Is the following: is you can go to the properties, and you can go to a timer. Let's see, let's search here, timer. And it's called has timer event. Okay. So this timer event, when you turn it on, you give it an amount of seconds. And then basically what it does, it doesn't call back to the server. Just every so often, it calls a JavaScript. So let me go ahead and show you this. I'm going to go here to, I'm going to make that 30 seconds. And I'm going to go here to client-side events. And I'm going to type in here timer, and you'll see on timer here. And in here, you can then do alert hello. Okay, let me go back to here, go to controls and add another control in here. Timer test. Okay, let's see if this works here. So I've got, again, I went to my properties here. I turned on the timer and gave one for every 30 seconds. I went to my client-side events and I went to on timer, and then I put in some JavaScript that will call here. And by the way, you can use action JavaScript. So it doesn't have to be a simple little JavaScript. It could be calling an XBasic callback, could do anything you want from that standpoint there. So let's go, let's save this timer underscore UX. Okay. And I'm going to go there. Okay. So now I should have made it 15 seconds. I'm sorry, everybody. So, hey, can we do the dun, 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 dun,
Jeopardy music. Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. I'm getting worried. Dun, 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 dun. Of course, 30 seconds feels like 5 minutes. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Show my alert. Where are we at? I should have made it shorter. I'm not going to touch anything. There it is, everybody. Now, I'm not going to betray you, but I'm going to talk for 30 seconds. So has anybody in the field seen Aquaman? If you have, raise your hand. If you have and you don't like it, don't raise your hand. Just raise your hand if you saw it and you like it. That'd be interesting. That's our first poll. There you go. So
yeah, we got a few. We have a few.
I saw Justice League. I thought that was pretty entertaining when it's all said. The whole interplay between the Flash and Superman was very fun. Flash kind of stole that. There it goes. Okay. So as you can see, it's going to run this timer every once in a while. Now, the question the individual had was like, well, I only want that to go when someone has something on it. So here I'm going to show you a little trick. I'm going to put in a button here. I'm going to call this button. Here I'll go start. And then I'm going to add another button here. And I'm going to call that stop. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a field just to make it easy to watch on this thing. And I'll go status. And I'm going to make the default of that field stop. Okay. So when the person hits start, I'm going to, and I apologize, this is a little bit there. I'm going to say set value. I'm going to set the value of status to, let's make it start. Okay. And I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to go here to stop. And I'm going to say set the value of status to stop. Okay. So all that's going to do is change the value of the status. Now on my JavaScript actions, or my client side here, I'm going to go ahead, and this is where I always break down. If, I'm going to go var status is equal to dialog.object dot get value of status, and then I'm going to say if status equal to start, and maybe that should have been called running, then this, otherwise don't do anything. Now this is all client side. Notice no server stuff here. And I think I have to put this in parentheses. I think that's good right here. And if anybody sees a error in my JavaScript, speak now or forever hold your peace.
All right.
So basically what I'm doing is I'm pulling the value of that little hidden variable going here. I'm using a field, but you could use what are called Windows, local storage and things like that. So I'm going to go back here to properties, and I'm not going to torture everybody. So I'm going to do every 5 seconds. I'm going to run this thing, and let's see if it works. Okay. So we're in stop status. So if I get alert right now, I've screwed up my JavaScript. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So now I'm going to click start. Notice I hit start there. Boom. And then if I wait another 4 or 5 seconds, there you go. Then I go, oh, get rid of that thing. So now it's still running that little script. And the cool thing is this is all client side. There's no dependency on this on the server. So stop checking things. Notice it's not coming up right now. So hopefully that's the answer. And thank you very much for sending in this, because we love these kind of, give us a little time to think about it so I don't screw it up too badly during the demo request, so it doesn't blow up too badly. So pretty cool. And this could be cool little icons and stuff like that. And, boom. And again, you're not limited to just like an alert. You could put in there where it's now going to start doing AJAX callbacks or web service calls or refreshing items on the screen, whatever you happen to do. And that's how I would accomplish it. It's pretty straightforward, pretty easy, and very, very flexible. Now, you'll notice in this case, I'm doing a timer event. So I'm sort of polling. Well, you could have the same thing on the server, where the server every once in a while is sending messages out through WebSocket servers, modifying the status and then letting things happen. I mean, the sky's the limit. There's a lot of fun ways you can kind of do this. And it really moves us towards those real-time communication kind of situations where everybody's kind of connected, and there's just, instead of everybody refreshing, they're getting updates as they happen in the world. So
excellent. Cool demo. And speaking of demos, you did a demo last week which involved a view box in a UX and a list box. And when you clicked on the list box, it opened the view box. And then if you clicked on another row, it closed the view box. And then if you clicked that new row a second time, it opened a view box. And the question that a person had was, could we reduce the number of clicks so that as I click from list item to list item, the view box control switches along with it without having to click twice?
Yes, absolutely. Let's see. I think this was the demo I did last week. Let's see if this looks like.
Okay.
I think maybe we'll see. No, that's obviously not the one. Let's see what modified. What was last week? That was the second. I think that was this one right here. That's, by the way, handy dandy. You can search by modified date, so I can find in terms of time. So when you're in here by name, so it's new, alphanumeric. By modified is what I tend to do, because then I'm touching what was like the last thing I worked on. So I tend to have modified search there. So, and I'm not just trying to delay. I just want to.
You're not just stalling for time.
I was just not a stalling for.
You're not.
I got to think through this here. What did I do wrong? Okay.
If you stall for 11 more minutes, Dan, you'll.
Yeah. See, I'm editing stuff here. No, that's not it. Gosh darn it. Well, here's. I'm trying to think. Well, maybe no, that was last week. I guess I don't have that one. I wonder where that is. Well, the way you, and I'm going to go ahead and open this one and look at here, is that if we look at the list properties, you'll see when I, I'm not doing it on there. It's on here. It's on the view box and it's in the items here. In the item right here, I was running, in this case, I was running like a little piece of JavaScript here, but this is action JavaScript. So you could create an action JavaScript that has multiple steps and then just trigger those steps. So that's really the way to do it is create action JavaScript. In that action JavaScript, chain together the steps you want to do. And then in here, you say action JavaScript, insert code to run that JavaScript action. And that works anywhere there's JavaScript, meaning that in this case, I'm doing it on an item in the view box. So when you click on an item that's been associated, it will trigger that action JavaScript, which would trigger 3 or 4 things that go on. Same kind of thing is on the list. If you click on an item in the list, instead of writing a little JavaScript, you can actually have a trigger action JavaScript, which does multiple items there. So certain behaviors are built in, like, but I would use that technique to kind of chain the actions together.
Got it.
I hope that's enough to give you a pointer.
Yeah, excellent. Let's see what else we've got here.
The
person said, hey, has Amazon RDS, have you used RDS with Alpha, and what has your experience been?
Love it. Actually,
I did too. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I really, it's always up. I mean, it's just rock solid. B, it's fast. C, if you control it, it's not that expensive, but also gives you a lot of scalability, meaning if you all of a sudden you need a lot more horsepower, you need like multi-region, you can do those kind of things. The one area that I find tricky with Amazon in general is their security model. And it's really just because they have such an incredibly wide range of stuff, their security model. So the only thing I caution you is plan on spending a couple hours just going and watching a bunch of videos on how to do security with AWS, because you're going to get, when you sign up for AWS, you're going to get like a secret key, like you use, like some secret keys. You don't want to be using those everywhere else. What you want to do is go in and then set up like specific little security modules, like users to use like different things. And that's just the area I find challenging, because it's just, you have to learn how they approach security, how those put together. Now, the only other thing that's very important too, and that's kind of involved, is that I think by default RDS is whitelisted, where it does, you can't call it, they lock down the ports, so you can't call it from like anywhere. So you have to go in and tell it, well, here are the IP addresses that I'm going to allow to be talking to the database. So for instance, you'd get your IP address of your development machine and add it to it. You would get the IP address of your Alpha Cloud account or your ZebraHost or wherever you happen to go there. So there's just plan on a couple, I love it. It works great. Once it's up and running, you never have to worry about it. But plan on spending a little time just understanding the security model, and then also understanding this whitelisting the IP. There's tons of videos out there for this. So you'll find that you'll be able to locate and understand it. But again, really easy to use, really powerful, and works great. Really, I enjoy it.
Fantastic.
Is there put in there, by the way, keyboard shortcuts for the tabbed UI? So check that out. Might be able to do what you want to do. I don't know if it closes the whole one, but
some of them,
there's,
I think that's for closing tabs.
Things you can
like
do
Control W, I think, kills the tab. But anyway, as it turns out, though, they did clarify their question. They are looking for a button. Is there a button that you could use that would close an entire tabbed UI and maybe take them to another page?
Yeah, you know what? The way you would do it is actually you just use JavaScript, if I'm mistaken. If I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Because you can add, let's try this. Let's go to default. Let me see if I've got a tabbed UI here. I'm going to go ahead and add a button here. Going to add a button. Okay. Has to be inside here. Close me. Go into the on-click event here. Go to here. And then I think you can say window dot, close the tabbed UI, because you're really closing the browser window. So JavaScript, I wonder if they even allow that.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah.
Close browser window. Yeah, there's window close right here. Oh, this is opening and closing a new window on the same browser. Now, that said, you could put the UX, the tabbed UI inside of a UX, and no, you can't do it inside of a UX. That's a really interesting one. I don't know. I don't know if there's a button that allows to do it. There's a warning when you try to close it, but that's a tough one. Not sure. Have to do some research.
Very good.
You stumped us.
All right, so we have 5 minutes left, and normally this would be impossible in any other software to demonstrate this, and probably with any other demonstrator besides you, Dion. But here is the challenge. Can you give us a crash course on creating a web service in Alpha Anywhere?
Wow.
4 minutes. I think you can. Building a script.
Okay. Yeah.
Creating a class.
Let's go ahead and
the class.
Start the clock. Okay.
Clock is started. And the question is there a video for creating web service? Yeah, there certainly are. If you can't find it, send an email to guides@alphasoftware.com and we can.
Step 1, create a XBasic class.
That's right.
In the class, you can use the built-in class definition. I'm just going to use the plain one for now. I'm going to go alpha fun my class. Here is my hello world method. And this will be hello world. Okay, so I've got a class in here. I'm going to save that. And it's going to give it a name. Now I go to web services. I click the new button. I then have an option to create a new definition to create a REST service. This brings up my opening here. I say add new class. I pick the class I just created. So step 1 is create your class with all your functions. Now you've got that. You'll see here my available methods. I'm going to go ahead and double click on here. I'm going to expose that method as a get, and you can do it as the different types, and that's all in the documentation here. Okay. By the way, if you want to get fancy, you can add authentication here, and you can also audit the API where you can trap those kind of things here. So now I've created that. I'm going to go ahead and open the documentation. Oops, that's right here. This is the documentation. So if you need to see it, it walks you through right here. And that was this button right here. I'm going to go ahead and live test this. So basically, this opens up what's called a Swagger definition, Open API, which is an industry standard way to show APIs. Come on, where's it? There we go. Just take a moment to wake up. So you'll get very used to this. This is just, and there's a lot of documentation. So here's my web service. It's temporary, but here's my get command. See, get hello world. And I'm going to try it out. And I go execute. Here is the curl command to run that. And it's a 200. And where's my response? Did I not do this? Where's hello world? Wait. 200. Let me go back and look at my command here. Let me look at my, oh, you know what? We'll go, okay, let me go back and look at my class. I think I screwed it up. Let me go in here. Yeah, function hello world. Oh, I get it right here. This is the new way to return. So the idea is you run the function, then you can return back to whatever this function is, a result. And that's where I screwed up. So I'm going to go back into my web service.
Notice, sorry, back in your script, when you did build that, there was another option in insert that was specifically for REST, which I've used before and found it pretty helpful.
Yeah, that one, because it allows you to trap or return like 200.
The 200 errors. Like exactly. Yep.
Yeah. But hey, it's my demo.
It's your demo. No, you do it your way.
Yeah. Okay, so let me go ahead and test this method again. And again, what's nice is that I didn't have to write a whole bunch of code. This is automatically. Let's go ahead and try it out, execute it. And now you'll see there's the response body coming back, which is hello world. Now what I can do, and how much time do I have?
30 seconds. You got 30 seconds left.
Yep. So then I deploy this to my local thing. Yep. I go to task scheduler. Task Manager. Oh, this is showing there. On the Windows Server, you go to Task Manager, you create a task that says curl dash and give it the URL of where you deploy that API at. And then what will happen is that task scheduler will just call that. And every time it calls it, it's going to run this and send back a response. Behind the scenes, it's going to run all the code you have in your class.
Awesome. Dan, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
For any questions we didn't get to, please send them to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com. Thanks very much for everyone who attended. Thank you, Dan, for presenting. And we hope to see you next week. Take care and have a great week.